Hello, my name is Richard Keegan and I am going to share with you about SPX Developing Competitiveness, Building Capacity and Capability, part of the UNIDO SPX training program. The outline for this lesson, Lesson 1, will deal with the UNIDO SPX and will explain what is it. It will describe matchmaking, benchmarking, buyer needs profiling, and supplier development. This first lesson will give an outline of what these topics mean, and further lessons will go into greater detail. Let's start with the UNIDO SPX and what is it. The UNIDO SPX system has been in operation across the world for many years. In Europe, Middle East and Africa, the Far East and the Asia Pacific, and in the Americas. Over the years, as in many things, it has evolved and developed and has been used across many different countries to help bridge between buyers and suppliers to help them develop business. The first step in the process is that of matchmaking. What is matchmaking? In effect, it's about linking buyers to suppliers. It's about finding suppliers who can meet the requirements and the needs of buyers, with a view to providing business to these suppliers in the developing world. The reach of the SPX is local, regional, and indeed global. Locally, the first instance is to see if it's possible for companies to supply companies locally, within their own region, within their own country. The second level is that of regional. In certain parts of the world, there are many countries that are close to each other, and the opportunity to do business within a region is real and viable if companies have the linkages, and the SPX provides those linkages and that support. But also in today's world, global reach is very important. And as local and regional companies develop their capability, they create the capacity to sell into the world market. And once again, the UNIDO SPX system helps and facilitates that process. In effect, the UNIDO SPX system is helping make business easier. To carry out the matchmaking, it happens at a number of different steps and stages. A trained person from UNIDO, a local operator, will actually visit a company and capture general enterprise data. Where are you located? How many people do you have? What is the scale of your business? What sectors do you supply and service? And what are the key products that you can make and have the ability to provide and sell to your customers? The second key aspect, having captured the general business information, is to understand in more detail the types of operations that you as a supplier can actually supply to buyers. It looks at the operations that you have the ability to deliver. It looks at the machinery that you have and the capacity of the machinery. What size of products you can make, what types of products you can make. It looks also at the test and control equipment that you have within your business. With today's standards of quality and requirements for quality, it's important to understand what types of equipment and understanding of quality that your business possesses. One of the new elements of the UNIDO SPX system is the inclusion of benchmarking. Once again, what is benchmarking? Benchmarking takes place at many different levels. In this simple slide, we talk about the potential improvement to be gained from types of benchmarking and the amount of effort required to do the type of benchmarking. In the very first level, the simplest type of benchmarking is where you compare your own company. You might look at departments within your own company and see, are all of the people in your company operating to the best level that you understand? The next level up is operating at industry standard level. What does your industry understand is good practice? If you're operating at good practice in your industry, in your region, The next question is, what is the best level of performance being achieved, being followed by companies in your sector? And the highest level is that of world class. In today's world, certain companies, certain processes within companies are seen to be truly world class. It's not always the case where a company starting out can even try to be world class, but they must understand how to build their capabilities towards being world class. Europe created a definition for benchmarking. And benchmarking's definition is that benchmarking is a continuous systematic process for comparing business processes for improvement. I'll explain this definition in brief. Benchmarking is not something you do once. It should be something that is done now and done again in 6 months or a year's time. A continuous process where a company wants to improve its performance and its capability and decides that they will continue to understand and challenge themselves to drive towards good, better and best practice. If something is going to be done today and done in a year's time, there needs to be a systematic process so that the approach used today will also be used in a year's time and in further time. Benchmarking is not purely about getting the numbers, it's about comparing business processes, understanding what delivers the results, but always for the desire for improvement. If it's just to prove that you're a good company, there's no real value. If you use the process to drive your improvement, you can achieve significant potential value. Benchmarking is a management tool. It's a management tool that helps managers objectively identify areas for improvement. It takes away the subjectivity of a known manager's idea. It helps identify the areas that need improvement, most specifically to help the company deliver for customer needs. And it also helps, if you work with others, to improve the areas that you need to improve. There are some issues with benchmarking, and this is where the UNIDO SPX system has been created, working with leading world actors to provide answers to these issues. The first issue is that of cost. How can a single company afford the time, the effort and the money to capture the information across what is best practice globally? How can a company in Ireland, in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Ethiopia compare and understand how to compare itself with those in the rest of the world? How can a company in Iraq understand how to compare unless there is a system? The question of sharing of information is a very important question to protect the security of your own detailed information to ensure that your business does not become compromised. All these issues have been addressed by the UNIDO system. If you're managing a business and trying to improve your performance, it's important if you're making decisions to have all the information. But one of the big difficulties is that it is often hard to get all this information. And benchmarking provides us the opportunity to manage by fact. Not by our opinion, but actually by fact. Because we, using the benchmarking systems, have objective information that helps us to understand how we compare, where our big issues are, where our opportunities are, where our strengths might be, so that we can make our decisions with good information. Benchmarking should be seen as a learning opportunity. It helps identify areas for improvement. It helps take away the question of answering the question of what is good? What is good practice? What does good look like? It can be very hard in an individual company to know the answer to that question. So the benchmarking gives us the opportunity to see what is good practice. It's also very hard for a manager in a company to understand the size of the gap. How far ahead are my competitors? Am I leading my competitors? and it's helpful to a manager who is trying to improve his business to understand that gap. But equally, it is also difficult to understand how to close the gap. And the UNIDO system combines not only the numbers, but also the understanding of what practices are used to help close the gap. What we need to do as managers to make our businesses more effective and more competitive. One of the key features of benchmarking using the UNIDO system is that we will, in fact, be learning with and from each other. Today, in the world, it's possible to share understanding to the benefit of all. And that's one of the key features of the UNIDO system, so that we can learn with and from each other, so that we can actually tackle the challenges facing competitiveness and build together to the future. Many people thought benchmarking initially was about quantitative, understanding what your profitability is, understanding your turnover per employee, having the hard numbers. In actual fact, UNIDO have worked with the leading world actors for small to medium-sized companies to combine both quantitative, which gives us the numbers, the hard numbers in terms of performance, plus also the qualitative. What is making a difference? What are the key things that need to be adopted by companies so that they can actually improve their competitiveness? I am now going to show you some simplified examples of the two systems to explain what I have just spoken about, qualitative and quantitative benchmarking. In the qualitative system, it was developed by Professor Chris Voss of London Business School and is known as the PROBE, Promoting Business Excellence Toolset. And in his research work that he carried out with IBM Consulting in the late 1980s, they identified there were a spread of companies in terms of their performance and their practice. And what Professor Voss identified at the time was that if companies did the right things, used good practice, they would get good performance. And the best of those would achieve world-class performance levels. In their research work, they identified a number of classifications where companies, going through a benchmarking process, could see were they world-class, contenders, did they have untapped potential, were they vulnerable, or were they at risk? And the system allows us to use a set of questions to identify where you and your company is in this graphic. The key point about it is there is a link between the practice that you use and the level of performance that you achieve. So if you do the right things, you will get the right level of performance. That's the qualitative benchmarking. As an example of the quantitative benchmarking, we're talking about the numbers, the hard measures, the things we would be used to seeing in our financial accounts and in our financial analysis. And the system will provide information in terms of how your company compares against the database. And the database at this stage is probably the largest small to medium company database in the world. That's been created over many years by enthusiasts who have chosen to cooperate as opposed to compete, to share information and data. The outputs from the benchmarking exercise that the UNIDO SPX team will provide will allow you to identify how good or how bad you are against your particular sector, against your peer group. It allows for analysis to be done against similar size companies, against similar sector type companies, and also will allow for regional analysis as the data grows within the UNIDO system. The green represents the strongest performance in the database, the red represents the weakest performance in the database, and the yellow represents the median. All of this will become clear as and when you engage with a benchmarking exercise with your trained benchmarker. The numbers are presented back to you in terms of number, in a ratio. in terms of the money value, turnover per employee, or in terms of the percentage, in terms of defects, in terms of on-time delivery. Providing a relative position for how your company compares against the database, and actually providing your actual score as well. It can be helpful to see how you compare against your sector, but if you want to benchmark next year, it might be useful and helpful to see you have actually improved your actual personal score for your company. A second key element of the qualitative system, the practices and the performances, is from the areas, and this has been greatly simplified because of the media that we're presenting in, but the actual data that you will receive back from your benchmark exercise will show you areas where you are strong and areas where you are weak against the norm, the median of the full database. 0 on this graph represents the median. If you're below the median, there are areas where you are weak. If you're above the median, there are areas where you are strong. In the actual report that you will receive, each of these bars will be representative of something that you are either good at or not so good at. The detail will be in your personal report that provides you an opportunity to maybe say, we are very good at this particular area. Do our salespeople understand that? Are they maximizing the potential for the business to deliver value to the business because we are very good at a certain aspect? Maybe it's response to customer requirements. Maybe other competitors are not as good as we are. Maybe we are not maximizing the potential for our business to be able to get real value for our business. Over on this side, on the weaknesses, maybe we don't realize that we have these weaknesses. Maybe we didn't realize before we did the exercise, because it can be very hard sometimes for a person to realize their own weaknesses. The system will help to provide that information to you and with you. If we know where we have a weakness, obviously the challenge is, what are we going to do to make a difference? How can we as a company, how can we as a group of people find answers to help us improve our weaknesses, to help us improve what we do so that we become more competitive? Throughout this whole sequence of lessons, the pressure, the emphasis is on people within companies who have the desire and the energy to improve. There is no simple answer, but there are tools and techniques that have been identified that will help a company, will help the business and the people to actually be more competitive. The challenge is, are you willing and able to take the opportunity to tackle your weaknesses, but to be aware also of your strengths, and to make an effort to improve what you do so that your business can be more competitive, so that you can do more business. When we come to the question of buyer needs profiling, we move into a different level altogether. Buyer needs profiling would have been one of the key elements of SPX from the very earliest days. And it's important to understand things about our buyers. Firstly, their needs can be quite complex. Quite often, they have difficulty in explaining their needs to us. Quite often, there can be difficulties in explaining and having a common language where a supplier can understand what a buyer means when he says something. This might seem very simple or difficult to understand, but different corporations and companies have different ways of describing their needs. It's important that we try to understand their needs. It's also important to realize that different buyers value different things. Not every buyer wants the absolute lowest value as the primary reason that they are doing business. Some buyers actually value the fact that we are responsive, that a supplier will make an effort to meet their varying needs. Some buyers value the fact that a supplier will be creative and will provide them with ideas that they did not have, will provide them with concepts that they were not aware of. Some buyers will greatly value a supplier who can deliver at short notice, where time becomes critically important. Others where lowest cost is the most critically important aspect. However, if you try to sell to a buyer who only values short lead time, and you try to sell on lowest price, you are potentially selling to him on the wrong needs, and you may be giving away some of your margin. A balance needs to be struck between your needs and the needs of the buyer. In today's marketplace, availability of resource, availability of materials, availability of capacity, availability of productive capacity are all in short supply. And we need to be aware that a balance between the buyer's needs and the supplier needs is the only sustainable way that we can move forward together. So being aware of the complex needs of buyers, it helps us if we can actually find a way to understand what those needs are, so we can understand how we can best meet those requirements of the buyer. And to do that, UNIDO is developing a system that will help suppliers understand the needs of the buyers and vice versa. We're looking at a system that looks at managing knowledge, improvement and change. On this axis of the spider diagram, we are calling this a spider diagram, we're looking at this desire within companies to change, to improve, to see how far companies want to drive themselves to better meet the needs of buyers. On this axis, we're talking about the ability of a company to develop and manage its people. Today, it's possible to buy a machine, to set it up in a factory. The big differentiator today is how well people are organized, how well they are managed, how well they decide to manage and build their own capabilities. And quite often, as a practicing manager, we miss the fact that a lot of our people want to do a good job and want to be better and want to actually achieve the same objectives that we as management want to achieve. There was a story told a number of years ago by a senior man who took over control of an American motorcycle company. Any motorcyclist would understand this is probably Harley Davidson. And at the time he asked himself, what did he want to achieve as the manager of Harley Davidson? And he said he wanted to do a good job, he wanted to get paid for it, and he wanted to believe that there would be a future in what he did. And as he spoke to his management team, they had the same objectives. They wanted to do a good job, they wanted to get paid, and they wanted to believe they would be doing it for some period of time. As they went down through the full extent of that business, they found that everybody in that business could agree to those objectives. And today, in today's world, as we manage people and develop our businesses, I believe strongly that most people want to do a good job. And the big differentiator is how do we as management make that possible for them to do so. So it's a very important aspect of what we're doing in the UNIDO SPX system, how to build capability and capacity. It's also important that we understand how we use our computers, our information technology systems, and our general assets. Because buyers want to know that we can actually use our equipment, use the modern ideas and techniques in an effective way to provide them the resources, the requirements they need at a proper time. Quite often, most buyers want to engage with a company for an extended period of time. They don't just want a single delivery. They want to be sure that the business that they engage with will be there for a period of time. And that's important that they understand that you and your business can manage your financial resources, that you have the ability to exist going into the future, that you have the money to be able to run your business and to be a supplier to them for a period of time. Sustainability is becoming a big issue. We need to be very aware of the needs for sustainability. We need to be very aware of the need to improve the sustainability so that the businesses can continue into the future. Once again, we are talking about the future. And the last axis of the spider diagram that's being developed will focus on managing external relationships. How do we create these relationships? How do we commit as a supplier to developing them? How do we commit as a supplier to understanding the needs of our buyers and to matching their needs with our ability to supply, to the mutual benefit of all? In this diagram you can see the red colour depicts the company, the individual company. The green colour depicts best practice in the global extent. And the blue indicator indicates where the sector is seen to be in relation to the key axes of the spider diagram. Once again, it becomes possible for a company to see they are either at or approaching, ahead or behind good practice or best practice. Once again, providing a basis for a management and their staff to find a way to create a plan to help them to drive forward to achieve improvement, competitiveness and long-term viability of the business. The outputs will show you how your performance meets the expectations of the buyer, if it's ahead or behind the expectations of the buyer. And it will provide once again an opportunity to see where the key issues are. The key issues in cost management, productivity or financial stability? Are the key issues in product quality or service quality or customer responsiveness? As I said earlier, the needs of buyers are different. The needs of buyers are specific. And it's important to match your capability and your desire to deliver with the needs of your buyers so that you can provide what they need in the format that they want at a level that provides you an opportunity to make some money and to retain some money, to produce at the quantities and the levels that they need, on the time that they need, that you can maybe create a stable business. And this is a problem not just in the developing world but across the full world, this whole question of financial stability. If we don't manage costs and we're not productive, it becomes very difficult to create a financially stable business. The outputs from these exercises of the benchmarking and the buyer needs profiling is to provide you as a manager driving your business's performance to actually create the sustainable competitive business. We will deal in great detail about product quality and service quality and customer responsiveness. But if we just look at product quality, in the first instance we need to understand, are we providing to our customer at a quality level that is acceptable to them, or are we over-providing or under-providing on quality? If we under-provide, the chances are we will lose the business. If we over-provide, provided we can do it sustainably and cost-effectively, maybe we will create a very positive response with our customer and create opportunities for further business. The objective of the approach of the UNIDO SPX systems is to provide us with a coherent, simple, focused approach to drive our business, targeting the areas where the biggest weaknesses are. Benchmarking provides us a diagnosis. And if we have a diagnosis and we know what our customers need, but we don't have a means to improve what we do and how we do it, we will stay as we are. We will not improve. And in the new UNIDO SPX system, we have incorporated for the first time the question of supplier development. We're using benchmarking as the diagnosis. We believe it's important, using a medical analogy, to be able to identify where the strengths and the weaknesses are within a company. But if you have a diagnosis and don't have a medicine to take care of the issue or the problem identified during the diagnosis, you don't get any better. And in the UNIDO SPX system, we're using best practice tools as the medicine. These are not state-of-the-art, world-class, absolutely only for big company tools. What has been identified is a set of best practice, good practice tools that are appropriate to small to medium companies, that provide a sound foundation that can build up through a process as companies evolve and build their capability. By using the diagnosis, by using the medicine, we are driving to build buyer satisfaction and more business. Why do we say that? If a buyer is receiving from you good product on time at a good price, chances are they will be satisfied. If they see that you are improving and choose to improve and want to improve, they will believe that you will be in the position to actually drive forward. The SPX system helps not just to understand you, but also your customer. It's important to understand you, know yourself. If you want to improve, you must understand you as well as your customer needs so that you can match your offering to the buyer's requirements. If you don't understand your business, your people, your systems, it will be very, very difficult for you and your people to meet your customers' needs. So it's important to know yourself, to know what you can do, to know what you cannot do. What you cannot do maybe today, but what you might be able to do into the future, so that you can build your plan for you and your people to move forward. The UNIDO SPX system brings this question of objectively identifying and prioritizing developmental needs. We will deal in benchmarking, we'll describe this in more detail, but the most fundamental part is objective. To be able to look objectively at your business, to identify and prioritize your developmental needs. And the benchmarking brings this question of objectivity to the table that has not existed before. The reason to prioritize is that few people, few companies anywhere in the world have all the time, money and people they need to fix all and every problem. So prioritizing becomes very important. But once again, the question is about development and developmental needs. If you just want to continue as you are, the UNIDO SPX system is probably not the most appropriate for you. If you have the desire to improve, to move forward, obviously the system is here to help. The benchmarking will also help you in clearly setting targets for improvement. If you find that you are now in the middle, it will be clear to you that there are opportunities to improve and to move to the next level. If you find you are in the bottom, maybe you want to find ways to move to the middle. If you're in the contender zone on the graphic, maybe you are ready to proceed to becoming truly world-class. And it gives you the opportunity to set for you and for your people clear targets. Clear targets that you can measure your progress against to find ways to drive your operation going forward. Over the course of these lessons, you will find many topics that will be dealt with in great depth. We will deal in great depth on the benchmarking, on the supplier development. We will also present to you what we call the spiral of improvement. And UNIDO's SPX system is now talking around a spiral of improvement to help you find ways to drive your competitiveness going forward. We've chosen a spiral to depict several things. Because the spiral will have a number of different levels on the spiral, it will show you there's the possibility to identify targets for your improvement depending on your stage of evolution. The tools you will need to adopt and to use and to understand will differ depending on which level of the spiral that you are engaging at. The depth and the detail of benchmarking will change as you move forward. The types of customers that you can supply to will change and evolve and develop as you build your capability and your capacity. The types of products that you can make, that your people can make efficiently and well, will improve and move forward as your capability develops and evolves. all in the context of being able to objectively identify where you currently are today, so that you can find ways to objectively identify what you need to fix today. One of the big issues that a lot of small to medium-sized companies face is that they believe the gap is too big. If they look at how they compare as a small company in the developing world, in Ireland, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, and they look at the biggest and best companies in the world, the ones who we all know, the brand names we all know, and they say, how is it possible for me to supply to them? The answer might be today that it's impossible. But if we look at the history of manufacturing, we will realize that many of those companies started as small companies, certainly within 2, 3, 4 generations. So the potential to move forward and to drive forward on capability by building our abilities is within our reach. It is definitely and certainly not impossible. But only if we, as managers, decide to lead, decide to take the opportunity to bring our people with us, to bring our companies with us, to understand what the actual levels of performance are required by our customers are, and that if we as leaders and managers take the opportunity to bring our people with us on this journey, on the spiral of improvement. The UNIDO SPX system will help us to do that by objectively identifying where we are, what our buyers need, and give us tools and techniques that have been proven to help us drive forward. We do hope you enjoy and engage with the rest of the materials presented in these lessons. And if you go to the website, you will find detailed information and materials that you can download to help you and your people on your improvement journey. Thank you very much for your attention.